Good day everyone. I'm Father John Brian Samson from the Diocese of Malolos. I am currently assigned as Parochial Vicar at the National Shrine and Parish of Our Lady of Fatima in Valenzuela City. And today, I will be sharing with you some information and knowledge from my research on the life and ministry of His Excellency, the Most Reverend Michael James O'Doherty, the 27th Archbishop of Manila. Now, you would be wondering now, why am I giving you this? What's my background? I was able to encounter and know more about Archbishop O'Doherty because of my studies in Rome. I studied in Rome for 2 years, and for my licentiate thesis on church history, I chose the life and ministry of Archbishop O'Doherty as the center and point of my research. Most specifically, his pastoral letters after the war, which I will discuss later. Now, you would be wondering, bakit si Archbishop O'Doherty ang napili ko? I'm from Malolos, I'm from Bulacan. Well, basically, the most understudied aspect of Philippine church history, according to many Filipino historians and based on my review of related literature, is really the Philippine church during and after World War II. So I believe that it's very important to enrich ourselves with the life of and the environment of the church during this time. Though chaotic, though it would seem that there is a lack of resources, but I believe that the church thrived during this time, nourished the faithful of God during this time. So it was my humble contribution to the enrichment of Philippine church history to study this particular phase in the life of the church in the Philippines. And most specifically, who would be a better center of this study than His Excellency, Archbishop O'Doherty, who journeyed with the Philippine Church, though an Irishman, during this time. And besides, napakarami ng meron tayo sa buhay natin bilang mga Katoliko dito sa Pilipinas na utang na loob natin sa pagpapastol ni Archbishop O'Doherty. So I believe that he deserves a proper presentation of his life and ministry as Archbishop of Manila. So without further ado, let's begin our study of the life and appreciation of his ministry as Archbishop of Manila. DELECTABOR in DOMINO, to delight in the Lord. This is how Monsignor O'Doherty described his ministry from his coat of arms as Bishop of Zamboanga and 27th Archbishop of Manila. Despite the humongous challenges that he faced, he was able to see the grace that pierced into that seeming darkness. This disposition was not just embraced by O'Doherty during his episcopacy, but even before that. So, let us look at the life and ministry of this Irishman who traveled all the way to the other part of the globe to fulfill his duty to the flock entrusted to him. So, in this quite concise exposition of the biography and accomplishments of Archbishop O'Doherty, as we commemorate his death anniversary today, I will be employing various primary and secondary sources such as excerpts from his diary since 1892, written while still a seminarian, and other sources including the biography leading to his life and death, written by a Columban missionary and historian, Father Martin Moon, who stayed in the Philippines for a total of 23 years. So other sources will include newspaper and magazine articles and public government documents pertinent to the context of O'Doherty's ministry. Now, if you look at the slides, it will be divided into various parts, from his childhood to his entry in the seminary, his priestly ministry, then down to his rectorship of Salamanca, then being appointed as Bishop of Zamboanga, then Manila, then during his time as Archbishop during the Second World War, and then finally, I would like to introduce my own personal research based from my licentiate thesis on the pastoral letters of Archbishop O'Doherty after the war. How did he reconstruct, or how did he exert effort in reconstructing the Archdiocese of Manila after World War II? Okay, now we begin with his childhood. The O'Dohertys were originally from Donegal, Ireland, but in 1649 they were displaced during the reconquest of Ireland by the Commonwealth led by Oliver Cromwell. They then settled in North Mayo in Ireland. Then despite the dire physical condition of the area, the O'Dohertys thrived in their crafts as poets and teachers. The Archbishop's grandfather, Seamus Bon O'Doherty, was a school teacher. So was his son, Michael O'Doherty Sr. So Michael Sr.'s time as a Catholic teacher was also mixed with social activism, as he and his brothers, Sean and Seamus, got involved in the public clamor for the ouster of the British rule in Ireland, and then that establishment of an independent democratic republic. So after the collapse of the rebellion, Michael Sr.'s brothers transferred residence to the United States, while Michael Sr., the father of the Archbishop, went to Charlestown to teach at the school, and there he met his wife, soon-to-be wife, Julia Kelly. They had 12 children, but 2 of the children died in their 20s due to tuberculosis. Because of this, the Archbishop, Michael James Jr., became the eldest surviving of the 10 siblings. The firm and firmless political resolve of Michael Sr., that's why I mentioned the background of his father, would be influential in the formative years of his son, who in the future would have to also deal with matters affecting a big part of political society. It was on the 30th of July, 1874, that Michael James O'Doherty was born. The future prelate of Manila grew up in a religious and quite disciplined environment because, as I said a while ago, he grew up in a family of teachers. Ang kanyang nanay at tatay ay mga teacher. So he was talented in terms of music and sports. He played the piano and violin. He was also into football. Then he became an altar server and member of the parish choir. So he was very talented, really. At 15, he entered St. Naphis College, the local diocesan college in Balagderin. And in 1891, he finished the official government examination and took home awards in Latin, English, Greek, and geometry. So he's not just talented, he's also very much intelligent. Now, from his childhood, we move to his entry to the seminary and then priestly ministry. On the 4th of September 1892, the young Michael entered St. Patrick's College, Maynooth as a seminarian. 1892. O'Doherty eventually accustomed himself to the rigor of seminary life, which included studies of philosophy, liturgical and spiritual activities, community activities, and recreation. So at the end, he was recognized as an above-average student who excelled in Latin, Greek, geometry, and the classics. So after 6 years, only 6 years, on the 30th of November, 1898, feast of the Apostle St. Andrew, Michael O'Doherty was ordained to the priesthood in the Chapel of the Sisters of Charity in Balagderin. And during his retreat prior to the ordination, O'Doherty wrote in his diary about the sanctity necessary for a priest. So he said in his diary, "I must keep my heart pure and free from worldly considerations, that I may be always ready to go wherever God calls me." So you would see that even before his ordination, his mindset was, I must be pure and be available for God, so that whenever He sends me, whenever and wherever, I would be available. So I think those were prophetic words from the Archbishop himself, na hindi pa niya alam anong mangyayari sa kanya, pero he knew that he must be available, no, whenever and wherever God calls him. Now, on the 8th of December, 1898, O'Doherty's bishop appointed him as member of the staff at St. Nathan's Diocesan College. During that 1 year and a half stay in the Diocesan College, Father Michael served in various capacities. So, he was college professor, he was also curate and chaplain. No? It was during this time that his mother contracted tuberculosis, considered at that time as a severe and grave illness with no clear medication. Actually, ito po yung nagpabigat, no, ng kalooban ni Father Michael O'Doherty. No? He was serving as professor, as pastor, pero mabigat yung loob niya according to his diaries kasi iniisip niya yung nanay niya na may sakit na tuberculosis. Remember, dalawa sa kapatid niya ang namatay sa TB. During this time, wala pang ganong gamot o bakuna sa sakit na ito. Kaya, yun ang preoccupation na, no? Other than his pastoral work. Now, later, the bishop assigned O'Doherty to Swinford, another assignment to another town, who ministered from 1899 to 1900, while going back and forth to St. Nathan's as college professor. During these early years of his priestly ministry, O'Doherty became involved as well in the Gaelic League. Ano po ito, no? This is a nationalist effort for the promotion of the Irish language. If you remember, the English Commonwealth invaded and took, no, Ireland. So there was a public clamor, let's maintain the Irish language even though our conquerors, no, are trying to instill the English language in us. Let's maintain the Irish language. So the Gaelic League was formed. No? So Michael O'Doherty was very much active, no, in the promotion of the Irish language. So it was also part of groups, no, and efforts in writing articles for the local paper. So this is where he cultivated his interest in the influence and capacity of the press. No? So as a young priest, Father O'Doherty received a meager salary of 20 pounds a year, no? According to his diary entry. But this did not stop him from visiting places outside Ireland like Edinburgh and Scotland and London. No? In all this, he maintained his love for his origins and his sense of duty. Yet behind these achievements, he had to endure the death of his mother on June 22, 1902, and his sister on March 28, 1904. No? So after some years of serving in Swinford and St. Nathan's Diocesan College, a new assignment was given to Father Michael. A new assignment was given to Father Michael, which was recorded in his diary on June 22, 1904. So he was appointed rector of the Irish College in Salamanca, Spain. Ano itong Irish College sa Salamanca, Spain? So from time to time, seminarians from Ireland would be sent to Salamanca, Spain to study there and stay in their Irish college. So, kung titingnan natin ngayon, parang boarding house, no? Residence ng mga seminaristang Irish sa Spain, no? Noon dati, yung Pontificio Collegio Filipino ay bago siya maging residence lang ng mga pari Pilipino nag-aaral sa Rome, ay before, even Filipino seminarians, no, would stay in colleges in Rome and then in Collegio Filipino. Pero ngayon ay sa mga pari Pilipino ito, no, pinagagamit. Pero before, no, itong Irish College, sabi ko nga, ay yung seminarians sila being trained for the priesthood. So they are Irishmen but staying in Salamanca, Spain. So by boat and then train, he set out from Dublin on the 8th of August to London. He then proceeded to Paris, to Bordeaux, Medina del Campo, and finally to Salamanca. No? The journey took a toll on him. He got sick for days, but eventually got over it. So when he arrived, he tried to make a stroll around the city, meet new friends, and learn Spanish. Most notable of his new acquaintances and friends, no, was the educator and existentialist philosopher Miguel de Unamuno. In his 7 years in Salamanca, Father O'Doherty accomplished a lot. He modernized the living conditions of the 16th century building. He reorganized the finances, focused on the spiritual and personal formation of the seminarians. And while rector, he also attended to his own intellectual growth. He eventually received his licentiate, and after 2 days of examination, his degree of Doctor of Divinity. One interesting note, the bishops of the United States once planned during the rectorship of O'Doherty to send American seminarians to Salamanca to be trained for the priesthood and to be well-versed in the Spanish language. The aim of the American hierarchy was to later send these young priests to the Philippines as missionaries to the newly colonized territory. Who would have known that this suggestion would be the destiny in the future of the young rector? Now, in 1911, a letter arrived in the office of the rector O'Doherty. It was from the Holy See. He was being asked if he would accept an appointment to become a bishop of a see under the British flag, but outside the Isles. So territory of the British flag, but outside the isle. So that would be Gibraltar. No? He replied affirmatively, but no quick response ensued. Nevertheless, by June of 1911, a new letter arrived asking if he would be willing to accept the nomination as Bishop of Zamboanga in the Philippines. Again, he manifested his willing obedience. With this, he resigned his post as rector and returned to Ireland for his episcopal ordination. On the 11th of September 1911, Bishop-elect Michael O'Doherty was consecrated in the Cathedral of Balagderreen. In Ireland at that time, overseas mission was a little unknown. Neither would anyone take notice of where Monsignor O'Doherty will be installed as bishop in Zamboanga. So from Ireland, who would have thought, saan ba yung Zamboanga? No? So who would know where that would be? So on 27th of February 1912, Monsignor O'Doherty arrived in New York. So from Ireland, he traveled to New York together with his secretary, Father Stanislaw Hughes, from a transatlantic voyage. Upon his arrival, he visited his friends and relatives living in the United States. One of his acquaintances was Cardinal Gibbons of Baltimore, who spent his younger years close to the home of O'Doherty's in Ireland. Monsignor O'Doherty paid courtesy visits to notable people related to his upcoming mission, like Cardinal William O'Connell of Boston, Archbishop Patrick Riordan of San Francisco, California. And one of those people whom he visited was President Howard Taft, who was the first American civil governor of the Philippines, and Manuel Quezon, the Philippine High Commissioner, who was in Washington at the time. So these important meetings seem to be the reason for the long stop of Monsignor O'Doherty to the United States. No, he needed to be informed, not just about religious situation in the Philippines, but also the very complicated political, cultural, and social ambience, crucial for his ministry. So after some cordial formalities when he arrived in Manila, O'Doherty, together with his priest secretary, went aboard the Changsha sea vessel bound for Zamboanga. 3 days after, he arrived in Zamboanga, where he stayed first with the Jesuits after his canonical possession. While Bishop of Zamboanga, O'Doherty made himself pastorally available for the people. He initiated pastoral visitations 2 months after his canonical possession. He also formed the Catholic Association of Prominent and Well-off People aimed at working for the spiritual and material needs of the faithful. He also set up a much-needed hospital named Hospital del Pilar, not just for Catholics, but also for Muslims in the region. And because of these achievements, he garnered the respect and admiration of the Catholic faithful and Muslims as well, even having forged a friendship with Haji Halam, the local Muslim chief. Overall, in Zamboanga, O'Doherty did his best for the accomplishment of his first ministry as bishop. Now, road to Manila. It was on the 30th of August 1916 that Bishop O'Doherty received a telegram from the apostolic delegate Petrelli telling him that he was appointed Archbishop of Manila. He was being asked for his consent. He replied in the affirmative and went off to continue his pastoral visitation in Dinagat as if nothing happened. After 3 months of laborious visitations, on October 9, 1916, O'Doherty boarded the first available boat going to Manila. On 15th of October 1916, O'Doherty arrived in Manila, greeted by politicians, Mr. Paterno and Mr. Rodriguez. After some time of transition and handing over of essential documents from Archbishop O'Doherty, who was transferred to the Diocese of Omaha in the United States, the Archbishop-elect Michael O'Doherty now holds the administration of Manila in its most crucial period. O'Doherty canonically possessed the Archdiocese of Manila on December 14, 1916. He was the 27th Archbishop of Manila since Domingo Salazar OP in 1521. Just a footnote, according to the Jesuit weekly magazine Cultura Social, the ceremony of his installation was indeed a fanfare, just like how we do it even until now. No? This description fits the manner by which the Archbishop of Manila has been received and installed, coupled with the festive celebration typical of Filipinos. So he was accompanied by a limousine by the Mayor of Manila, Dominador Gomez. The new Archbishop was greeted by throngs of faithful, including members of the clergy and religious orders. In attendance were Francis Burton Harrison, the Governor General of the Philippines, members of the both Houses of Congress, justices, consular services, men and women of the Navy, and armed forces. Makita ninyo, noong pa man din, we Filipinos would throw a very big festive welcome to our new Archbishop. Now, we proceed. After his installation, let us now place ourselves in the view of O'Doherty upon settling in the Archdiocese of Manila. What did he say? In his January 1, 1917 diary entry, he writes, I want you to look now at our slides. He said in his diary entry, in the meantime, I have discovered what a heavy burden awaits me. I stress the difficulties, the need for Catholic schools, a Catholic press, flourishing seminaries, frequent reception of sacraments, the sanctification of Sunday, above all, the absolute need for the laity to cooperate with the clergy, now so scarce, and of shouldering the responsibilities as members of the mystical body of Christ. So, based from this entry, O'Doherty's main agenda as he started his ministry were the following. We have 4. Look at the slides. Number 1, the flourishing of seminaries for the increase of the number of the clergy. Bakit ba kumonte ang bilang ng mga pare sa Manila noon? The lack of priests was due to the Revolution of 1898, the Aglipayan Schism, and the annexation of the Philippines to the United States, since a great number of Spanish religious missionaries went back to Spain, thereby leaving parishes vacant. And at that time, nung dumating po ang mga Amerikano, they brought with them Protestantism. So, dumami ang mga Protestanting communities dito sa sakop ng Archdiocese of Manila at that time. So, kinakailangan na palakasin ng mga parokya. Paano palalakasin? Kailangan madagdagan ng mga pare. So, it's number 1. Number 2, to revitalize the role of the laity in the activities and mission of the Church under the leadership of the clergy. As I mentioned a while ago, O'Doherty was known in Zamboanga to gather well-off and notable personalities in order to sustain the work of the church in assisting the spiritual and material needs of the people. Kaya nga sila nakabuo ng simbahan, yung Hospital del Pilar sa Zamboanga, because of the help of these notable people. So, his mindset was the same in Manila. We have to empower and tap the potentials of the laity to help the clergy in carrying out their ministry. Pangatlo, attention to the new public school system under the American regime. During the American regime, pinagbawalan ang pagtuturo ng katesismo sa mga public schools na hindi kagaya dati, of course, during the Spanish period. Ngayon, during the time of O'Doherty, he saw the need. How can we navigate through this challenge para makapagturo ulit ng katesismo ng pananampalatayang Katoliko sa ating mga public schools, which eventually he was able to manage. And fourth, attention to the strong presence of Masonry in society. So yan ang nakitang mga major problems ni O'Doherty right after he was installed as Archbishop of Manila. In all this, O'Doherty sees the heart of the problem, as he states in his January 18, 1917 diary entry. So ito ngayon ang core ng problema. Sabi niya, there seems to be a great cleavage between the clergy and the laity. People have a distorted idea of what the church is, as they regard the church as the clergy. And thus, the so-called church is always fair game for attack, not realizing that in calumniating the real church, of which they are the major part, they are calumniating themselves. I am longing to go out on pastoral visitation to meet the people and the Filipino priests and let them know the truth. So ang problema, according to Archbishop O'Doherty, mayroong separation masyado ng clergy at laity. Na ang mga tao daw noon, nung dumating siya sa Manila, ang iniisip, pag sinabing simbahan, sino lang yun? Mga pare. So sabi niya, this is not the real church. Kaya marami nagsasabi, ba't ganyan ang simbahan? They do not realize that they're actually pointing to themselves. Kasi part sila ng simbahan. So ang gusto ni Archbishop O'Doherty, let's try to change this mentality, Tulong-tulong dapat ang mga pari at ang mga laiko magkakatulong sa pagbuo ng simbahan dahil lahat tayo ay bahagi ng simbahan. Now, various factors form this gap. Ba't ba nagkaroon ng separation masyado? Clergy at mga tao, laity, According to the Jesuit historian Father Schumacher, it was a product of series of action which started from the anti-friar propaganda of the nationalist ideologies, influenced by Masonic principles. The nationalists saw the friars as hindrance to the ideals of the movement to form a nation independent of Spain. Calumniatory stories were circulated around the masses that destroyed the image of the clergy little by little. These sentiments were carried over to the Katipunan, so from the nationalist ideologies to the Katipunan or the Revolutionary Filipino Army, headed by Andres Bonifacio, who went in so far as subjecting the friars to torture. Another factor was the obvious disunity among the Catholic clergy in the rise of the Aglipayans. So, major factor was the Aglipayanism, since many of the Filipino clergy were attracted to join the schism. Now, let's look at the fruits of the labors of Archbishop O'Doherty. Nakita niya yung mga problema, inaksyonan niya, ito yung mga naging aksyon at naging resulta. So after laborious pastoral visitations, the Archbishop called for a meeting of prominent Catholics of the Archdiocese in the auditorium of the Assumption College. Just what he did in Zamboanga, as he was used to Ireland, O'Doherty started a Catholic Federation of Laymen and Women. So in one of his August 1917 diary entries, O'Doherty stated, "What is the root of the malady? For if we really want to apply the right cure, we must know the nature of the disease. I will tell you frankly here," sabi niya dun sa mga kausap niyang Catholic laymen and women, I will tell you frankly here, and now my own opinion. The problem is, it is bad Catholics. Hindi sa labas, no? Ang problema, nandito sa loob, bad Catholics. With these words, he enjoins them to be entirely devoted to the cause of the Catholic Confederation through the promotion of unity between and among Catholics, through various institutions, the advancing of a Catholic press to counteract any anti-Catholic propaganda, and the institution of branches of the Confederation in parishes in order to be the voice of protest against anti-church abuses, and in time of acute crisis. Likewise, as part of the Archbishop's plan was to strengthen the institution that forms future priests. So dahil nakita na rin niya yung problema sa laity and clergy, tapos na siya sa laity, dito tayo sa clergy. Lack of priests. That's why, by the beginning of 1918, he initiated the refurbishment of San Carlos Seminary. No? The institution of the Archdiocese established in 1702 in Mandaluyong, Manila. He also started the minor seminary dedicated for students who wish to become priests. From time to time, he visited Mandaluyong to play games like tennis with the seminarians in order to know and bond with them. So, hindi siya yung nagtataglang ng seminary. He was really close to the seminarians. Believing in the capacity, now, moving forward, believing in the capacity of the printed press to teach and influence people, the Archbishop invested his attention in the Spanish circulation entitled Libertas, with the editorial staff headed by the University of Santo Tomas. However, it had to close down because of the editor's pro-German stance, which did not sit well with the United States, who entered the Great War against Germany in 1917. So, nevertheless, the Archbishop urged his fellow bishops to allot 8,500 pesos annually for the support of Catholic press. Hence, the birth of El Filipino. El Filipino with Claro M. Recto. Take note, Claro M. Recto as its editor-in-chief. So, moving forward, one of the skills that Monsignor O'Doherty had was his ability to engage in political affairs without sacrificing the stand and dignity of his person and office. He had great and cordial relationship with renowned political figures such as Governor General Francis Harrison, Governor General of the Philippines from 1913 to 1921, and Senate President and future President of the Commonwealth, Manuel Quezon. To report to the Holy Father for the ad limina visit of 1920, O'Doherty attached one of the letters of Quezon, who praised the prelate for his accomplishment in terms of education. So here we see how Quezon really appreciated the work of Archbishop O'Doherty. In his letter, Quezon says that the people here benefited from the schools and dormitories you established and from other social benefits. This was from Manuel Quezon's letter to Archbishop O'Doherty on March 12, 1920. So in the year 1930, moving forward with his relationship with Quezon, so Quezon retracted his Masonic affiliation in front of Archbishop O'Doherty after the latter and Mrs. Aurora Quezon's pleading and efforts. The concern and pastoral solicitude of O'Doherty during the time of President Quezon's sickness led to the latter's conversion and repentance. All these are recounted in O'Doherty's August 18, 1930 diary account. The year 1925 was also full of activities for the Archbishop. The Catholic Conference, the celebration of the 400 years of arrival of Christianity in the Philippines, the Second Synod of Manila, and the whole year pilgrimage to Rome. In 1929, the Archbishop also managed to rally the whole Archdiocese behind the cause of the First National Eucharistic Congress, which came popularly after the First World War. He enjoined all Catholic lay organizations and the clergy to set up in every parish a program for the renewal of the faith and instruction of the people on the importance of the Holy Eucharist. This phenomenon of great devotion to the Eucharist was again manifested in the celebration of the 33rd International Eucharistic Congress in Manila from 3 to 7 of February 1937. On the 3rd of September 1936, the Archbishop celebrated his Silver Jubilee as Bishop. You can see, sa mahabang panahon ng panunungkulan ni Archbishop O'Doherty, ito yung mga naging accomplishments niya, not just events, no? Hindi lang mga gathering of people, but he really delved into, no, the nourishment of the faith and life of the people, no, of the Archdiocese of Manila. So he wanted to engage all of them, to engage them behind the cause of the church in the Archdiocese. Now, part of his ministry was also dark times, no, during the Japanese occupation. We all know the story. The 8th of December 1941, the Solemnity of the Immaculate Conception, Japan declared war on the Philippines, bringing with them the appearance of a friend rather than a foe. On January 2, 1942, Manila totally fell under Japanese rule. The Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere agenda of the Japanese included the courting of religious leaders in the country, knowing that religion plays an important role in the disposition and alliance of the Filipinos. In Japan, Christianity was considered antagonistic. It was looked upon with suspicion and disdain, but because the Philippines was so religious, the Japanese military, which was dedicated to rooting out all vestiges of U.S. colonial rule over the Philippines, needed the cooperation of the Filipinos. It was in no position to suppress Christianity as an antagonistic religion. Mahalaga sa kanila, pananampalataya, huwag nating awayin ang simbahan. So doon sinubukang suyuin ng Japanese Imperial Army ang simbahan. Dito na tayo papasok, yung naging ugnayan ng mga Hapon, ng Japanese Imperial Army kay Archbishop O'Doherty. It suffices to quote a headline of the Spanish newspaper at the time, La Vanguardia, to present the initial steps of the Japanese propaganda machine. It states here, please look at the slide. The chief of the religious section of the Japanese Expeditionary Army visited His Excellency, the Archbishop of Manila, Monsignor Michael O'Doherty at the Palacio. The Japanese officer had been to the apostolic delegate the previous day. The Japanese authorities have stated that both interviews were cordial and that a frank exchange of views were shared, which it is hoped will bring about a clearer understanding by the Catholic Church of the main objective of the Imperial Japanese Army. There occurred a series of meetings with Archbishop O'Doherty, requested by Lieutenant Colonel Tomoji Naruzawa, the said chief of the religious section of the Japanese Army. So, 2 days, January 7 and January 17, 2 meetings. In these meetings, Naruzawa pointed out that Japan has come to the Philippines not to induce sufferings among Filipinos, but to end it, and that their goal is to establish peace and prosperity over and against the colonialist forces of America and Great Britain. And that in order to do so, Japan expects the cooperation of all bishops and priests in the realization of the co-prosperity sphere in Greater Asia. However, after all these meetings, O'Doherty firmly answered the colonel that the Filipino people and the whole country at that were accustomed to the separation of church and state. And that while the clergy exercise authority in things spiritual, it had always been the policy to refrain from taking part in matters purely political as enjoined by canon law. In addition, the Archbishop asserted that his mandate from the Holy Father is to attend solely to the spiritual needs of the people, so that politics remain within the competency of those who are in charge of governing. Likewise, the Archbishop made it clear that he cannot oblige the other 17 bishops to attend the requested meeting, as his jurisdiction does not include the others, and that it will be difficult for the prelates to come to Manila because of the disrupted line of communication and transportation. In short, the Archbishop in all these meetings maintained an open line of communication, but has never agreed to the plans of the Greater East Asia policy. He was very cautious. He did not cooperate. Against all the propaganda against Archbishop O'Doherty, he did not cooperate. He maintained an open line of communication because he was very cautious. Mas marami ang mga pari, mga reliyosang mamamatay, ikukulong at sasaktan ng Japanese Imperial Army kapag ka naging outrightly antagonistic siya. Alam nila yon. Kaya, si Archbishop O'Doherty, he had to be very careful in all his words. He wanted to say no in all of their propositions. But he needed still, on the one hand, maintain an open line of communication. So he needed to strike the balance na hindi magkakaroon ng agreement between the two of them, pero hindi rin niya ma-offend ang mga ito para mas ma-contain ang damage na gagawin sa Archdiocese. Now, according to Father Martin, the Archbishop's attitude has been diplomatic and cautious. Please take note. He was diplomatic and cautious. He did not want to agitate the rage of the Japanese, since it will bring more harm than good for the Church, especially the clergy and the religious. The commitment, nevertheless, of the Archbishop to speak against the abuses of the Japanese Imperial Army can be witnessed in some instances when he voiced out stern complaints for the sake of the clergy and the religious. If we would read the account of A.V. Hardentorp, one of the great historians of the Japanese occupation in the Philippines, sabi niya doon, Archbishop O'Doherty complained outrightly. Yun ang isa sa diretso na sinabi niya. Could you please stop oppressing my religious sisters, my nuns, then my clergy, then one of the bishop cannot proceed to his pastoral visitation dahil wala siyang sasakyan. You should bring back all the necessary resources of this clergy and religious so that they could go back to work. Yun ang kanyang demand naman, kay Colonel Narusawa. So the effect of the meeting was critical for the Archbishop. He was placed by Narusawa under protective custody. Protective custody for his refusal to cooperate. Despite some concessions by the Japanese, like the permission to celebrate Sunday Masses and the usual Holy Week processions and rites, the Archbishop remained virtually a prisoner in his palace. Hindi siya lumalabas. And when they were not able to persuade the prelate to do their bidding, na makipag-cooperate sa kanila and to endorse the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, what did they do? They resorted to discrediting him through the press. When the Americans started bombing Manila, Archbishop O'Doherty transferred to the Dominican community at the University of Santo Tomas. Wise enough, he brought with him the holdings of the Archdiocesan archives, which were saved when, on the 14th of November 1944, a bomb hit the Archbishop's palace. Now, we all know the destiny of the Second World War in the Asia-Pacific region. The 3 years of Japanese occupation virtually started to crumble upon the landing at Leyte of the American General Douglas MacArthur and his men on October 20, 1944. A year after the Battle of Leyte, on 5th of February 1945, the Battle of Manila ensued, which caused a very devastating effect. More than the military warfare was the vicious oppression of Filipinos. When the Japanese army saw that the Americans have encircled them, they started to lash out their ferocity onto civilians as they regrouped towards the center of the city. 4 months after the landing in Leyte, on the 27th of February 1945, General MacArthur had already secured Manila and taken away from much of Japanese control. He then handed over the government to President Osmeña, and on July 5, 1945, General MacArthur, in his communique, declared the liberation of the islands from Japanese occupation. On August 15, 1945, after the hitting of the 2 atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, subsequently, Japan finally surrendered unconditionally. So the wide scope of the war brought to the country lasting effects which are felt even until the present moment. And these effects fall into various categories. It is never enough to reduce the damages to physical, no? More than the physical damages, in which cannot easily be repaired, are the harm done on the economic, political, cultural, and moral life of the Filipino people. At this point, allow me to briefly present what I consider the most prudent action of Archbishop O'Doherty in the most crucial of times. His pastoral letters, his directives, no? Which are for the life and rhythm of the Archdiocese of Manila's clergy and faithful after the war. So if we would ask, after all the destruction, what did he do? I think this is the first thing that he was able to contribute for the Filipino people after the war: direction. Direction. When all else fails, mahina ang gobyerno, walang makain ng mga tao, magulo ang lahat, walang matirhan, nagkakagulo, ang binigay ni Archbishop O'Doherty sa kanyang clergy at sa mga mananampalataya: direction. No? So, if you would look at the slide, dito makikita po ninyo the following letters, no, from 1945 to 1947. Nakalagay dyan yung description ng letter, sinong nag-issue, sino ang pinatutungkulan ng mga sulat, the clergy or the lay faithful, ano po yung content, and the condition of the letter. As per my research in the archives of the Archdiocese of Manila, no? So, next slide, makikita po ninyo, yan yung isang sample, no? Isa sa mga letter ng mga ni Archbishop O'Doherty from 1945 to 1947. So, yung nakikita nyo po ngayon sa inyong mga screen, yan po ay 1947 letter, no? One of the 1947 letters. Okay, so from 1945 to 1947, the Archbishop issued 11 circular letters pertaining to the restoration of the war-torn Archdiocese. There were 4 letters issued in 1945, 5 letters in 1946, and 2 letters in 1947. Observably, 4 of which, the last one in 1945 and the first 3 in 1946, were not issued directly by the Archbishop, but in his authority through Monsignor Jose Jovellanos, the then Vicar General. It was during this time that the Archbishop needed to attend to his health condition and recuperate in the United States. Also, O'Doherty was given time to appeal to the body of American bishops for support for the rehabilitation of Manila. Now, this is my personal contribution, no, to this research, to this lecture. Let me summarize the contents of the letters issued per year. No? May mga makikita tayo, if we can actually read the letters, no? May makikita tayong mga attitude, no? Themes ng bawat taon. Ano yung naging focus ni Archbishop O'Doherty per year sa kanyang mga pastoral letters? So, The 4 letters of 1945 revolved around resolving the material concerns of the Archdiocese, like the urgent physiological needs of the people, kasi gutom ang mga tao. So, we would think, ang una agad iisipin ng isang pari o ng isang arsobispo kapag ka nagkaroon ng gulo, nasira mga simbahan. Okay, i-repair natin ang simbahan. Hindi. Hindi yun ang naging mindset ni Archbishop O'Doherty. Ang unang-una niyang naisip, anong pangangailangan ng tao? Pagkain, matitirhan, tubig. At yung unang-unang pastoral letter niya, yun agad ang kanyang pinention. No? Huwag kayong magpaikot-ikot sa Manila. Bakit? Delikado. Delikado. Don't roam around Manila. Go back to your homes. Kung taga-probinsya kayo, umuwi kayo sa probinsya. Don't stay dito sa Manila kasi magulo. So yun ang kanyang mindset. Tapos, ang kanyang directive, magtanim kayo, cultivate your land. Kasi walang makain ng mga tao. And may serious looting. So, you would think na, ang uunahin nito, ipatayo ulit natin yung katedral, patayo natin yung mga simbahan, isecure yung mga simbahan. Hindi yun ang unang directive niya. Dahil alam niya, ang pangangailangan ng tao, physiological, pagkain, matitirhan. So makikita niyo yung pastoral sensibility ni Archbishop O'Doherty dito. Hindi niya agad inisip lang yung spiritual needs. Hindi. In order to arrive to the nourishment of spiritual needs, dapat pansinin din natin ngayon yung material, physiological, physical needs ng mga tao. No? After that, he now made arrangements for the care of the ecclesiastical goods. No? So, ang paalala na niya dun sa isang letter sa mga pare, secure the ecclesiastical goods. No? Tabi ninyo yung lahat ng natira pwede pang magamit. Huwag ninyo ipamigay, huwag ninyo hayaang makuha. Secure them. So, only after he took care of the physiological needs of the people, dun lang niya inisip yung ecclesiastical goods. No? Then the 4th letter, finally, took care of the moral needs of the people. Not just part of the civic duty of the citizens, but also as part of the mission of the Church on earth. Anong naging problema dati? Looting. Kasi nga nagkakagot ng mga tao, nagnanakaw, nag-aagawan. No? Tapos, nagkaroon ng negative effect sa moral ng mga tao. Paalala ngayon ni Archbishop O'Doherty ay yung inyong moral uprightness ay hindi lang civic duty, huwag kayong magnakawa. Hindi lang yun. Kung hindi, this is also part of our mission as Christians here on earth. No? Live uprightly. Live according to Christ's moral standard. No? Now, yun yung 1945. Nung okay na yung physiological needs ng mga tao, nung wala ng problema, o na-address na, nabigyan na ng direksyon yung bagay na yun, the letters of 1946 reveal 2 things. Kasi dito na, yung first 3 letters, sabi ko nga, they were issued by the authority of Archbishop O'Doherty in the name of the Archbishop of Manila, pero ang signatory ay si Monsignor Jovellanos, the Vicar General at the time. No? So yung 1946 letters, they reveal 2 things. Number 1, during the time of the governorship of Monsignor Jovellanos of the Archdiocese of Manila, he never worked independent of the vision of the Archbishop. Baka akala natin ay, porket na-issue ito ni Monsignor Jovellanos, siya nagdadirect talaga kung anong gusto niya. Hindi. He did not work independent from the vision of O'Doherty. In a very prudent way, he mobilized the clergy and the faithful of the Archdiocese to what has always been the pastoral thrusts, the pastoral vision of his superior, Archbishop O'Doherty. At ano yun? The rebuilding of educational system, the revival of the spirit of Catholic action through the help of church organizations like Legion of Mary, and the cooperation with the state insofar as it is for the betterment of the people to which the church is morally obligated. Ibig sabihin, yung mga reminders at directives ni Monsignor Jovellanos, same with the vision of O'Doherty. Catholic action, Catholic system, education system, tapos cooperation with the state. Now, it is to be strongly believed that prior to O'Doherty's departure for the United States, he has given a clear-cut he has given clear-cut instructions to his Vicar General. Knowing the pragmatism of O'Doherty, one can sense that he knew there will come a moment when the response of the Archdiocese to the problems will increase from only the physiological needs of the people. Mula doon sa pangangailangang material lang, pagkain, aangat ang pangangailangan na ngayon ng mga tao. We have to form society through and with the influence of our Catholic faith. No? So his level of awareness and attention to pastoral circumstances impelled him to encourage the people to remain not just on the receiving end, but after they have been aided, to start the work of continuing the mission of the Church. Nabigyan na sila, ngayon, taon na ito, tayo naman ang magbalik, Catholic action. Tapos na tayo, so tayo naman ang tumulong na. Now, on to the last part of the letters, 1947. The first 1947 letter calls for help to cooperate with the government in addressing the problem of tuberculosis. Number 1, to recommend the campaign to parishioners. Number 2, during the Sunday Masses, to allow the officers from the government of the Tuberculosis Society to conduct their collection inside or at the doors of the churches. And number 3, to speak with as many influential people as possible to help in the campaign of the government. So this program is termed by the Archbishop in his letter as charitable work. Pakikipagtulungan sa gobyerno para sa mga tao is charitable work. The various efforts in the field of Catholic action established by O'Doherty with the help of various religious and lay volunteers were haphazardly abrupted by the Second World War. So to these ideals that he wanted to return as mentioned in the second 1947 circular letter. So yung pangalawa tuling letter niya sa 1947 ay about Catholic action. It is observable how O'Doherty invested so much in propagating the spirit of Catholic action. So in addition to efforts in catechesis and spiritual and liturgical formation, he also tapped into the potentials of the lay faithful to commit themselves to works of charity, education, formation of the youth, and the use of Catholic press. He knew that the process of rehabilitation cannot just be done solely by the clergy, but must be a concerted effort of all Catholics. So, not for the pastoral letters, but from here we see how after the war, even ailing, no? Dito po, makita niyo sa kanya mga diary entries, pahina na siya physically, no? Pero after the war, kahit na alam niyang magulo, he was able to see the real needs of the people and addressed it head on, no? Addressed it head on. Now, on to my conclusion and last part. Archbishop Michael James O'Doherty reigned for 33 years, unsurpassed, no? Kahit si Cardinal Sin, hindi niya lalagpasan yung 33 years ni Archbishop O'Doherty. So the longest in the history in the Archdiocese of Manila. These 33 years were marked with hopes and joys, struggles and tears, but also prayers and works. In all his efforts, he wanted to make himself available to God's people even in the darkest of times. So that was his idea, experience of delight, to delight in the Lord. His delight in the Lord was seen in how he navigated the ship of the Archdiocese in its adjustment from the Spanish reigns to the American Commonwealth and until the country's desire for self-determination. He died on the 14th of October, 1949, as he wished to pass away on a Friday, the day of the Lord offered his life on the cross. It suffices to describe the love of the Filipinos for their spiritual leader with the words from the Manila Times in a news article dated October 23, 1949. So, please look at the slide. The last journey home was thousands of miles from his native Ireland. But the flock of his adopted land, which he had tended for 38 years, mourned as his body was laid to its final rests. With grief springing from grateful hearts, the loss of a true friend of the Filipinos and faithful servant of God was brought out in the symbol of the light being snuffed out. We remember him today, Archbishop Michael James O'Doherty, in his death anniversary. More than his person, his works, and his accomplishments, we remember Archbishop O'Doherty as a faithful pastor and a prudent servant in the vineyard of the Lord. Thank you very much, and may God bless us all.